Michael had always believed that moving to a quiet suburb would bring peace after the chaos of his past. The town of Willow Creek, with its neatly trimmed lawns, silent streets, and worn brick houses, promised a fresh start. Yet on his first night in the modest, two-story home he'd inherited from a distant relative, an uneasy feeling began to seep in. The silence of the evening was not the comforting calm he had imagined, but rather a heavy, almost tangible tension. Outside, a stray dog howled under a crescent moon, and the wind whispered through the gnarled trees as if sharing dark secrets. Michael tried to dismiss these signs as mere coincidences, unaware that real horror was already lurking in the shadows of Willow Creek. In the days that followed, small anomalies started to puncture the illusion of suburban tranquility. Neighbors exchanged curt nods and avoided prolonged conversation. Eyes flickered with barely concealed anxiety when certain names were mentioned. Michael noticed inexplicable sounds in the night, a soft creak, a muffled whisper, and footprints in the damp earth leading from his back door to the overgrown hedge. One evening, while retrieving a misplaced tool from the basement, he discovered an old, dust-covered ledger hidden behind a loose panel in the wall. Its pages detailed strange, routine observations of a man who had once lived in the house. A man whose entries grew increasingly erratic, describing sightings of a figure lurking at the edge of the property and a growing obsession with the town's secrets. Michael's rational mind fought against a rising tide of dread, yet the evidence was impossible to ignore. Determined to understand the unsettling atmosphere, Michael began a careful, methodical investigation. He spent long afternoons poring over local records at the town library and conversing in hushed tones with reluctant residents. What he uncovered painted a portrait of a community haunted by unsolved disappearances and whispered scandals. A series of missing persons reports, archived for decades, hinted at a pattern that intersected with the ledger's cryptic entries. Every clue was disturbingly ordinary: misplaced objects, unexplained absences, odd behavior. But when pieced together, they formed a mosaic of deliberate actions. Michael's nights became sleepless vigils as he retraced steps, compared faded photographs, and questioned the thin veneer of normalcy that masked a simmering terror. The logical explanation seemed to point not to supernatural forces, but to a human hand, meticulous, methodical, and chillingly detached. One rain-soaked evening, as thunder rumbled in the distance, Michael's investigation led him to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. There, in the dim glow of a single flickering light, he came face to face with the man from the ledger. The man's appearance was unremarkable, a gaunt figure in a threadbare coat with eyes that betrayed a haunted intensity. But his presence radiated an unsettling calm. In a measured, almost conversational tone, the stranger recounted his twisted rationale: a desperate desire to protect the town by eliminating those he believed to be tainting its purity. His methodical nature and disturbing justification were as chilling as any ghost story, yet entirely rooted in human malice. A tense exchange unfolded. Words became weapons as Michael's logical inquiries clashed with the man's warped ideology. The confrontation was not a grand battle of supernatural forces, but a raw, terrifying glimpse into the mind of someone who believed he was an agent of grim necessity. In the immediate aftermath of that fateful encounter, the rain subsided and the warehouse fell silent, leaving Michael trembling in the aftermath of revelations too harrowing to fully comprehend. The police arrived later, treating the case as one of severe mental disturbance and unresolved community neglect. Yet, even as legal procedures began and the disturbed man was taken away, the scars of that night lingered in Willow Creek. Michael returned to his home with a mind forever shadowed by the realization that horror could be as unyielding and ordinary as a neighbor's secret. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind, now carried an echo of that confrontation. A reminder that beneath the veneer of everyday life, dark truths could lie in wait, perfectly logical yet profoundly terrifying. Days passed, but the sense of unease never left Michael. The town moved on as if nothing had happened, as if the man from the warehouse had never existed. The news covered the story briefly. Local man arrested for disturbing incidents. But no one spoke of the deeper truths buried beneath decades of silence. Michael found himself trapped in a state of restless paranoia. Every time he walked through the house, he felt watched. The feeling wasn't supernatural. There were no ghostly apparitions or flickering lights. Just an ever-present awareness, as if something had shifted in the very fabric of his reality. Then, small things began happening. A chair moved slightly out of place. The back door, which he always locked before bed, was found ajar one morning. A note, one he did not write, appeared on his kitchen counter. "You shouldn't have looked." Michael refused to let fear take hold. He installed cameras around the house, double-checked every lock, and tried to convince himself it was his mind playing tricks on him. But the footage told a different story. Late one night, unable to shake the feeling of being watched, Michael sat down to review the recordings. The first few hours were uneventful, just the usual stillness of the night. But then, at exactly 3:12 a.m., something changed. A shadow moved at the edge of the backyard. Not a person, not an animal, just a shifting darkness, too fluid, too deliberate. It lingered by the hedge, watching. Then, in a single unnatural motion, it turned toward the camera. There was no face, no defining features, yet Michael felt a chilling certainty that whatever it was, it had seen him. The video ended abruptly, as if cut by an unseen force. Michael checked the cameras. Every single one had stopped recording at the exact same moment. Michael knew then that this wasn't over. The man from the warehouse might have been caught, but he was never the real threat. He was merely an extension of something older, something patient, something that had been in Willow Creek long before him, and something that remained. The town would never acknowledge it. The neighbors would never speak of it. But Michael had seen too much. He had two choices: pretend it never happened, live his life as if nothing had changed, or leave Willow Creek behind forever. The next morning, he packed his bags. As he drove away, he avoided looking in the rearview mirror, afraid of what he might see. Because deep down he knew, once you see the truth, it never stops watching you.